Good evening, everybody. Before we start, please turn your phones and devices to silent. And at this time, for those that can, please stand for our national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of its command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
This time I'll call on Councillor Bruno for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Worship. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hiawatha, the Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. We have two proclamations this evening, Council. World Hepatitis Day, July the 28th, 2024. Can I have Councillors Danch and Hoyle move that? All those in favor? That's carried. And we have Rail Safety Week, September 23rd to 29th, 2024. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Beauregard move that. All in favor? Those are carried. So we do need to move the agenda, but we do have some addendums. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we do have an addendum. We have a delegation for approval of minutes for June 25th. Under staff reports for Oil Mill Creek, we do have two delegations, a delegation for the Urban Forest Management Plan report, and 5 delegations for the Waterfront road allowances. And under minutes of boards and committees, we do have a recommendation coming from the Joint Fire Services Review Committee concerning the terms of reference. We also have one more, which is a bylaw to amend the terms of reference.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk. And also, Council, if we could move item 8.8 up to the top, once we get into items for discussion. Can I have Councillors Bodner and Bagu move the agenda? Any questions? Any further changes? All in favor? That's carried. I do not have any disclosures of interest, but I'll just confirm any disclosures of interest. Thank you, Council. Our next is our regular, the approval of minutes from the regular meeting of Council from June 25th, 2024. We do have a delegation, Council, that is going to ask us a question with those. We have Mr. Stinziani. Is he here this evening? Yeah, if you want to come up. State your name and address and ask us what question you have with regards to those minutes. Just press the red button. Yeah.
My name is Gino Stinziani. I'm at 2591 Fire Lane number 3. I just have a simple clarification or a question to better understand the process. I was looking at the minutes of the June 25th meeting, and it appears that City Council has approved to go ahead and sign a lease for the tower, the radio, the TV, and I guess cell tower that's going down on Pinecrest Road. But yet, in 2 weeks, there's a meeting with locals to discuss and get their feedback on it. So what I don't quite understand, and I'd like some feedback on, is why, since the decision has been made, why bother having a meeting with people, to the locals, to ask their opinion when in fact the decision has been made?
I'm going to turn this to the CAO, but I believe it was Councillor Bodnar that brought the amendment to that with regards to finalize it, there would have to be a public meeting with regards to this with the neighborhood, so. Mr. Long, then?
Through you, Your Worship, I know that Council's approval was really just approval in principle, pending consultation and engagement with the local residents. So that's how it was set up with the company.
Correct.
So a final approval has not been granted. They must commence consultation and engagement
Correct.
before final decision is rendered.
Correct.
But isn't the perception in doing so that in fact council has made a decision and that the opinion of the locals is purely for purposes of show and perception more than an actual influence on the decision? Because if you haven't heard the comments from the locals in terms of what their thought process is, how can you possibly approve and agree to signing the lease?
So if you would have listened to Mr. Long, we haven't done that. It is going out to public. It will come back to this council, and council will make that final decision at that time.
Okay.
So
why then bother having it go through council on June 25th when the decision has been made?
Because we've been approached by a company that wants to do this, and in order to move it forward, we had to make a decision. So the decision was to move it forward, they had to do certain things, and that was public consultation that Councillor Bodnar brought forward that evening. So there was an amendment to the motion that was on the table, basically saying it's not a done deal. You're going to go to the public, it'll come back to us, and then council will vote on it.
Okay, I have one more question. What is the protocol in this city of Port Colborne for councillors to reply to their constituents when they're addressed or asked a question by email? Is there a protocol, or is there some degree of expected level of service, feedback?
Mr. CAO.
Through your worship to council and the delegate, I know of no requirement on council members that they respond within a certain period of time or at all. I do know that, and it's partially my fault, Councillor Bodnar forwarded, if you're referring to your email specifically,
Yes.
to Councillor Bodnar, he did forward it to me on the weekend, and partly because it was the weekend, I didn't respond to him as of yet.
But the email was sent several days ago.
Yeah, July 20th at 8:54.
No, I sent an email to Councillor Aquilina and Bodnar 10 days or 2 weeks ago. I don't have the precise date, but.
Okay, well, through your worship to the delegate, I see one that you sent to him on Saturday at 8:54 in the morning, and he sent it to me at 8:18 that evening. And partly because it was Saturday evening, I did not reply to it, and I did not know that it was the subject of conversation tonight. I intended to reply to him earlier, so I can't say he's entirely to blame for you not getting a response. But having said that, there is no requirement for a council member to reply within a certain amount of time or at all.
But there is an expectation.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Okay, so we do have a set of minutes on the floor. If I could have Councillors Baggio and Bruno move those minutes. Are there any questions to the minutes? All in favor? That's carried. So council, staff reports to be brought forward tonight are 8.1, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9. Correspondence item 9.3. Are there any more items to be brought forward? If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Danch move the remainder of the items. All in favor? And those are carried. We do not have any presentations or separate delegations this evening, so we're on to the mayor's report. So what a summer it's shaping up to be. Port Colborne has so much going on, and since our last meeting was in June, I want to just take a step back to acknowledge the Port Colborne Optimist Club for the fantastic Canada Day in the Park event coordinated for so many Port Colborne families and visitors to our community. It was one of the best attended Canada Day events I can recall, and Council and I thank the Optimists for all their efforts and for including so many activities for everyone as we celebrated our country's 157th birthday. Likewise, for the Niagara Antique Power Association Annual Heritage Display on Canada Day weekend, the 52nd annual event celebrating our rural heritage. The opening ceremonies had to be postponed a day due to rain, but it turned out to be a terrific weekend for them. We thank those organizers, their volunteers and sponsors for continuing to shine a light on our agricultural heritage. We are now 10 days away from Canal Days, the city's biggest annual festival. On behalf of Council, I extend thanks to our staff, our sponsors. We have more sponsors this year than we've ever had before, thanks to our communications team and the hundreds of volunteers who come out and work and support this event, one of the greatest single economic generators in our city. Founded in 1979 at the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum, Canal Days has grown to include events and activities and venues across the entire city. There are a dozen major sites to enjoy Canal Days, from the craft show in the Valet Center, the car show at the TA Land and Sports Complex, Kids Zone downtown at the King George Park, the Midway downtown to the concerts at H&H Knoll Lakeview Park, the annual Boat Parade of Lights, and the museum. The Welland Canal figures prominently, of course, and all the ships which pass upbound and downbound through our city. You'll hear master salutes all weekend, 3 long blasts followed by 2 short, as ships sound their horns to acknowledge each other and to the crowds along West Street. We look forward to welcoming thousands of visitors to our community starting a week from this Friday. Staff and volunteers are in training sessions all this week, so everyone understands their role as a Canal Days ambassador. We're all Canal Days ambassadors, whether we're directing traffic, emptying trash receptacles, or painting faces. One of the first things we all do to prepare for Canal Days is buy a Canal Days t-shirt, which looks like this. My understanding is they're sold out of some colors, so I would tell you to get to the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum as soon as you can if you want the shirts. These shirts, and for the past decade, have been designed by Stephen Brulé, and he started out as a summer student at the museum back in 2012. The t-shirts have become one of their biggest fundraisers, and everyone has to have an official Canal Days t-shirt. Be sure to get yours before they are sold out. I hope you'll all refer to the city website and Canal Days on the social media platforms for the full schedule and all the do's and don'ts. For example, please leave your dogs at home. Thank you to our title sponsor, Geo Rail, and to all our sponsors and local businesses who partner with us in this tremendous civic enterprise. Things are also hopping over at the Lighthouse Festival Theatre, where the 3rd play of the summer season opens tomorrow, Mary's Wedding. It runs until July 20th in the theatre at the Roseland Center, August 20th. We are so fortunate to have Lighthouse Theatre in our city, a professional company of writers, actors, directors, set designers who share their talents with their sister company, Lighthouse Theatre in Port Dover. Inside Roseland, Wonder and Whimsy is an exhibit of Port Colborne folk art from the museum collection. Drop by Wednesday to Saturday from 1 to 3 to see the colorful, inventive, whimsical works of art. Friends of Roseland have established a tiny art library and an art tool loaning library, so if you're inspired by the show to make something, the tools are there for you to borrow. The next of the concerts on the lawn at Roseland will be the Toronto All-Star Big Band on Monday of Canal Days. The orchestra and vocalists of the All-Star Big Band have played in Port Colborne many times over the past years, and they tell us Roseland is one of their favorite spots to play during the summer. You design your own stops along the South Niagara Artist Studio Tour, the weekend of Canal Days, August 10th and 11th. I encourage you to take in the studio tour where you'll meet so many talented local artists, sculptors, jewelry makers, potters, and for sure you'll find something very unique. And the opening ceremonies of the 33rd Olympiad in Paris are this Friday. There will be almost 11,000 athletes from 206 countries competing in 32 sports. A few weeks after, about a month from now, the Paralympic Games open on August 28th. And I'm thrilled to share with you that a young woman from Port Colborne will be competing in those games. Emma Van Dyke, 21 years old, will be one of 4,400 Paralympic athletes from around the world competing in Paris. Emma is a swimmer, a sprinter. She broke the Canadian record for a 100-meter backstroke 3 times in the last 2 years. Like all Olympic athletes, she's hard at work to qualify for the Olympics, especially after breaking her foot last spring. She's in the pool at Brock 8 times a week. I met her this morning and gave her our city's best wishes, as well as a package of shirts and hats and some water cooler water bottles. And we asked her to take a picture at Olympic Village with her Port Colborne gear on and send it back to us. She does make us proud. And so we're excited for Emma, and we'll be cheering for you and all Canadian athletes at the Olympics and the Paralympics, which talks about the shirt I'm wearing. So I put this on this morning because I knew we were talking about Emma tonight, not knowing I was meeting her because it was set up at the last minute. But Parasport Ontario, which is the shirt I have on, we have a great partnership with them since 2018. Over this past winter, we hosted the Canadian Championships for para hockey, and which was hosted over May long weekend. We just heard today that Parasport Ontario, they're going to be hosting the Canada Para Games in 2025 with Port Colborne as one of the sites for one of the sports that are coming here. So that'll be sledge hockey again. But we've sponsored some of the stuff they've done, and we've worked very hard with them with regards to parasports here in the city of Port Colborne. That ends my report. Questions, council? Our regional councillor, Councillor Davies, is here this evening. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome back from PEI.
Thank you.
Did you bring any lobster for us?
Yeah, sure. Presented in the back later.
There you go. Good evening, council. It's nice to be here in a cool building during the lazy, hazy, hot days of summer. But I wanted to update you on a few things this evening. The region is starting its budget process, which normally happens at this time of the year. We expect to be in discussions through the summer and the fall, and hopefully a decision on our budget will be made in December. But in advance of that, I wanted to bring some really good news to council this evening. On Thursday, we will be dealing with a recommendation to approve $10,616,951 to be allocated from the region, from the Investing in Ontario Fund, which was a $20.1 million fund that was established at the region in 2008. The $10.6 million being recommended to be invested here in Port Colborne in the East Side employment lands will focus on water and wastewater servicing. It will also enhance East Side sewage pumping station, a force main replacement, which will be in the 2025 capital budget. The project is essential to support the servicing of the East Side employment lands, including the Assay-Cassay battery separator plant and security of water supply to the east side of Port Colborne. This will address many of the issues that have been experienced in the East Side sewage pumping station force main. It will also provide one of the most important capital projects in the tunnel under the Welland Canal as a key component of this servicing, which will be combining all possible additional services as well across the canal to the east side. The detailed design of the tunnel is underway now, and we expect the tendering for this project to be ready for the spring of 2025. The 2025 budget strategy, we begin that this week, this Thursday, and the numbers that I'm going to quote you are just preliminary, but they are given to us by staff as we start to go through the line-by-line analysis of the region's finances. So at this point, the general tax levy for 2025 has been pegged at 8.72% from the region. Water and wastewater, a whopping 12.59%. And waste management levy, 5.9%, and increase in Niagara Transit at 6.65%. Those are the individual categories for the agencies and services provided by the region. I fully expect that as we dive deep into these numbers, that they will change substantially. This is based on maintaining the status quo level of services provided by the region, as well as dealing with some of the outstanding issues of using reserves as a way of funding some of the services that provided by the region. So as we dive into these issues, I'm sure that these numbers will change, and hopefully I will be pushing for them to be decreased. One of the interesting memos that we received is the debt strategy analysis in the region. Estimates now suggest the overall debt burden of the region and the local area municipalities is forecasted to double over the next 5 years, largely due to infrastructural renewal. Standard & Poor's rating of the region as a AA+ status is an important allocation of strength in Niagara's finances. So as we look at our infrastructure and long-term debenture financing over the next couple of years, the concern is that we are headed into a direction of doubling the net debt across the region, between the region and the local area municipalities. Something to keep in mind in future discussions. One of the most number of calls I've received on any issue this summer has been on Niagara Transit. As everyone knows, it's a new commission established as an independent commission. Councillor Beauregard sits on the commission as Port Colborne's representative. But we're still the front line of contact for many people who have issues with regional services, including transit. We have heard a lot of calls of people having difficulty in booking, waiting days rather than hours for an ability to book an on-demand service, staying on hold for a long time, and having calls dropped. I set a long set of questions to the commission, and while I remain concerned with the growing pains, I'm confident that the transit system will iron out the kinks in the months ahead. The on-demand, for example, was anticipated to have 20% growth in this current bus budget year. It has gone well beyond that level, and the strain on the services with a new provider has been problematic. But I know that we'll stay on the case and ensure that Niagara Transit provides this level of services that the residents deserve. And that, Mr. Mayor, is my report. If there are any other questions, I look forward to bringing you further updates as the budget process unfolds at the region, and be happy to take any of your questions.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Davies. Questions? No. Unscathed tonight, Fred. Thank you. Appreciate that. Look forward to Thursday. Next, we're getting into staff remarks. Mr. CAO?
None from me, thank you.
Nothing? Madam Clerk? Anything out of your department?
Nothing, Your Worship.
Mr. Szpowski?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. A few updates today. First off, we wanted to let the council and the public know that over the next 2 weeks, we'll be installing in-road flexible bollards as part of our traffic calming and speed management program on Empire Road and Pleasant Beach Road. Secondly, as a general update to our infrastructure needs study plan presented to council earlier this year, we wanted to let council know that all facets of it are on track as previously presented. To date, we've lined 4,500 meters of wastewater pipe, inspected over 500 laterals in priority areas. We're nearing completion of the CCTV gap project, and smoke testing has started and will be continuing throughout the year. This coming fall and spring, we'll be flow monitoring again to gather information on how and where the lake impacts our sewers, and also for comparison purposes in areas that we've rehabilitated. Next, we had a request for 2 project updates. The first being the service club sign installations on Highway 58 and Highway 140. The service clubs have provided their digital logos, and we've provided them to the MTO so that they can begin making the sign, which will then be followed by installation. We haven't received a solid timeline back from the MTO, but we will follow up with council as soon as we hear back. Secondly, the Tennessee Avenue gates have the east wall planned for rehabilitation. The design has been completed and tender is planned to be released in August, where construction will follow based on contractor availability. And finally, as a notice to the public, the city is completing fire flow testing throughout the month of August, which may cause discolored water in your area. Staff have been delivering door hangers to those specific areas as they move throughout the city with contact information available. Staff will also be completing smoke testing within the wastewater system in the East Village starting next week to identify any cross connections from the storm sewer or private properties to the sanitary sewer. Thank you.
Mr. Bowles? Mr. Long? Okay, thank you. On to Councillor's remarks. Councillor Aquilina.
I have nothing, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Borger.
Through your worship, I'd like to just speak about what Councillor Davies had brought up regarding the Niagara Region Transit and some of the concerns that have been coming to council from customers of the NRT. So, as just to elaborate, recently the NRT had entered into a new commingled servicing agreement, whereas prior, each municipality sort of had their own contractors and they were operated differently. Now they're under one contract with a certain provider. Since the commingling of conventional transit and specialized transit services for on-demand, we have experienced some significant issues. Some of these issues include ambulatory customers requiring ramps, issues with vehicle capacity, high demand periods and extended hold times, call drops, and abandoned rides, and issues with standing orders. So people with specialized transit who requires, because they have some sort of medical issue, not being able to, who really rely on standard bookings, not being able to get a ride and get to their place for the time that they need to be there. So a lot of these issues come from essentially 2 main causes. The service provider previously was completing trips outside of the agreed terms of the contract, and the providers were engaged in selling passes on board to passengers for cash and indirectly billing ODSP on behalf of customers. So these were essentially practices that were not known to the employees of the NRT when they brought forward the request for proposal in providing this new service. So it significantly impacted the service and delivery that is being presented today and that customers are currently experiencing. So what we're doing to move forward, what the NRT is moving to do, is they're going to work on enhancing customer communication, review vehicle allocation strategies, ensure transparency in service delivery, collaborate with the new service provider, and engage with stakeholders. A report is scheduled to be on October 15th to come to the NTC to address many of these issues that are not being able to be addressed immediately. So just to be clear, the NRT is working on addressing whatever issues it can immediately, and then a lot of the more long-term issues to be addressed, hopefully in the report coming October 15th. So stay tuned. I will like to provide a report, and we'll see how it goes from there. But to the public, we are well aware, the NRT is well aware of these issues, and we're doing what we can to move forward. And if there are any further issues, please let us know. Thank you.
And Councillor, thank you for your work on this committee, and I know both Councillor Davies and I through my office, have sent you a number of emails that we've received, both to yourself and the chair, Mayor Cisco. And you guys have replied back and been in touch with those that have been emailing us. So we appreciate what you've done in that. Thank you. Councillor Begga.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had quite a few, but staff was talking about them, so I've only down to one, actually half of one. For Director of Public Works, we talk about our solutions we're doing to fix the water leakage and the inflow and other thing of waste. Is there any way we can give our residents a measurable summary? Like, did we save X amount of liters or X amount from 2024 so far? Just an update for the residents. Like, we pay our water bills every month. It's an expensive bill, and I think our residents deserve to know, has the city done anything to correct the problem? And maybe September or something like that, we could throw something out at council, just an update for the residents. I think they deserve it, and they should be able to get it.
Through your worship. So I think that's a great plan. We did take into consideration the whole time that there will be reporting back to council based on what the findings are. So the flow monitoring that happens typically occurs in the fall and spring. Those are the times where we would compare it back to back annually. So that is the plan for this year as well, is to have the flow monitors in specific locations so that we can monitor versus the previous year. So we will be gathering that data over the fall and spring, but we are isolating specific other areas to basically monitor a little closer to show what the difference is going to be. So we will be able to present that. We also have a number of videos and imagery of pipes that had lots of infiltration in them. And then the process to rehabilitate them, where the infiltration is now eliminated because of the work that was completed. So speaking with Director Bowles, we were going to get together to be able to do a bit of a presentation during the budget approval process, just to let council know an update on the I&I work that's been completed, if that's okay with you.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I thank you very much. I appreciate the update for the residents, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple, actually two came in today and one that I had on my list. Both to either the Director of Public Works or Joe on these. One was that came in today was Minto and Erie. You remember when we've moved forward that water main for Erie Street and the paving. There were some issues there with the contractor and the paving, and there's sort of some areas that are mound. So in that particular corner, there's been water ponding there quite a bit since the paving, and some shoulder stone has been put on there, but it's just transferred the water to the center of the street, I'm told. So I don't know if there is, I believe there is still some outstanding issues with either repaving or the contractor that put in. I'm wondering if you could enlighten me and the resident. I can pass that on to them.
Steve?
Through you, your worship. So we do have, Erie Street is currently under warranty from the work that you mentioned, the water main work. So we're just waiting for that warranty period to expire to make sure that there's no further issues that we need to go in to repair. And then we will be putting top asphalt on top of Erie Street, which will also follow with some shouldering to blend the edges of the road. That is planned for 2025.
Okay, so is that sort of spring of 20, like that's not, is that part of our normal paving project, or was that part of the restoration in the water main budget?
Steve?
Through your worship, so it was separated into the resurfacing program due to the length in between the project being completed or substantially complete, and then having the resurfacing program at a later date. So it is part of the resurfacing program. It will typically happen throughout the summer as we start booking the contractors in. So I can't guarantee an exact time frame, but typically it's occurring throughout the summer.
So that'll be the summer 25.
Correct.
To deal with the water issue there temporarily till then. Okay. The other one was, and actually this fellow I bumped into from the Bartok area, one of the great upgrade plans you had after the meeting with the residents was, I believe there was gonna be some text messaging to the residents with respect to the Omer sewer shed, and if that pump surcharges, so they'd have some advance warning on their flow valves and not flushing till we get that in order. I had thought that it was actually complete, but the resident told me that I met downtown here this morning that it's not. Do you have any update on that?
Through your
Joe?
worship. Thank you. Through your worship. Yeah, that is correct. The flow monitors that are going to be alarming are installed. We are programming them as we speak. We do have a list of contact information from all the residents, so we have been working with them, and we should have test programs going out probably by the end of this week or early next week.
So you have all their contact information? It's just
Microphone.
It's just all the implementation of that, is that correct?
Through your worship, yeah, that's correct. We have all the information. We have the levels where we want to set them and where we want them triggered. So we will be doing some testing, like I said, within a week. We're just in the middle of programming those numbers.
Great, thank you. And just one last one to thank you. Residents at the end of Neff Street there, since we've done that project, we've had a few big rains, and it's not even rising above the curb, let alone crowning the sidewalk and going into that. So congratulations, that's finally one way out of the way, and I know it frees up a pump too for issues in the country that we talked about during some of the drainage meetings. So thank you very much for that. The residents really appreciate it there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott's on vacation, so we'll go to Councillor Danch.
Thank you. Just a couple points there. I want to talk to Steve on, I guess, just a big, good job on the Lions field. I hope everybody's been by it. It looks fantastic. It certainly upgraded the look of our downtown core. The other thing is the park signs. They seem to be non-existent. They've been that way for some time. I just wonder if we can get a date on when we'll start looking at those things again.
Steve?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. So our most, I'd say 98% of the footings have been put in place, and we are starting to erect signage. They're going to start in most of the prime premier parks, so it'll be H.H. Knoll, Lockgate. They'll start doing the main roads first. They should be going up pretty quick on the ones that do have footings to be able to run through the city. So that will be taking place over the next month.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoyle.
Through you, Mayor. I'd like to thank staff for taking care of all of my requests that I put in for the last 2 weeks. My list keeps getting bigger and bigger. I think the public needs a little more understanding on our the seaway at Nickel Beach, that we cannot, if I'm right, remove it unless it's dry and up, if I'm not correct.
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, that is correct. And our beach manual that was approved by the Ministry of the Environment, it only allows us, once it's on the beach, we can go and we can rake it up and we can remove it. But when it's in the water, we can't. We are having conversation with the ministry about finding a protocol that might allow it to do that. But I do caution council and residents and visitors that when you look at the beach, it is kind of the west side that has it. The east side of the beach, if you walk down the beach, you don't, at Nickel Beach, for example, you don't really experience it. And it is a big lake. So without a storm, it doesn't necessarily go out, but once we have a storm, it will be removed. And we experienced that last year after a couple of storms. The seaweed that did pile up did leave. But to the councillor's comment, unfortunately, at the present time, we would love to remove it, but we can't remove it. But we are working on trying to find a protocol that would let us alleviate it some.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, and that's just, I wanted you to say that out loud so everyone could hear it, who wants to hear it. Besides that, all my other issues have been taken care of, so that's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff has looked after everything that I had, but I'd like to ask the Director of Public Works. I was watching the news, and they were they were relining the laterals in Hamilton with something like we reline the sewer pipes. Is that an option for people in Port Colborne? Have you any experience with it?
Yes, through you, your worship. In terms of sanitary laterals, we're going to be completing a similar program a little later this year. We actually have terms of reference already created, ready to go and retain a contractor. With the 500 laterals that we have inspected to date, we have identified specific issues that need to be addressed, whether they're on private property or on city property. One of the more cost-efficient methods is lining them as long as they meet the right criteria and are able to be lined still. So that is the case that we're going to be completing that more frequently now, rather than an open cut installation where there's restorations to the sod, driveways, curbs, sidewalks, and roads. It's a much cheaper alternative. So yes, 100% we're looking at that now, and we'll have some done by the end of this year.
Great, thank you. Now on to items requiring separate discussion. Okay, so we moved item 8.8 to the front, council. It's the Waterfront Road Allowances 2024-143, moved by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Aquilina. Public Works Department Report 2024-143 be received. The council direct the Director of Public Works to implement the following. 1, retain ownership of the 7 waterfront road ends. 2, install benches and waste receptacles at the waterfront entry points on Pleasant Beach Road, Wildwood Road, and Pinecrest Road. 3, include the waterfront road ends within the active transportation master plan for review. 4, remove existing signage related to the pandemic parking prohibition. 5, continue to highlight and drive tourism to the city's destination locations, including Nickel Beach, Centennial Park, and H.H. Knoll Park. 6, install signboards at road end locations to indicate the location, proximity to Nickel Beach and Centennial Park, and rules to respect the environment. 7, collect existing gate keys and return deposits. 8, install upgrade gates at all 7 road ends locations to allow pedestrian access and restrict vehicular access. 9, create a bylaw to restrict vehicular access and parking between the lake and gate on all 7 road ends to replace all other relevant bylaws. 10, create a process for waterfront access through a municipal consent permit. And the council approve increasing the road ends capital budget to $140,000 by pre-encumbering the 2025 capital and related budget by $40,000. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to refer this back to staff and ask that staff hold a public meeting and probably get back to us in September with a report from the results of that public meeting if those timelines work.
Do you want to make that the last meeting in September?
I think that would be
okay.
wise, yeah.
So the last meeting in September,
yeah.
Steve?
Yeah.
Anything else to
add? A whole bunch, but I think I'll leave it at that.
No, but I mean direction for staff.
Oh, direction for staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, other than the public meeting, and there might be another councillor that has some ideas, but for me, that would be
that's fine.
That would be good.
Councillor Aquilina.
I'll second Councillor Bodner's request, but I would like to, and I don't know if it's a staff recommendation or some other form, if the clerk needs clarification, but I would like to put forward that I think it's in the city's best interest to be as transparent as possible, and when we have reports that impact residents, such as this waterfront or short-term rentals, that we might want to adopt a standard practice of having public meetings so that we can climatize the public or business owners to what's being put forward.
Yeah, that's actually won't be part of this. That's totally separate. So,
okay.
But we'll make sure we talk to the CAO and the clerk's department about that. Okay. That's a good idea. But that It's not part of this?
Yep.
As far as what to add or time?
Yeah. I'm just wondering, people are hearing this tonight and they'll go back and tell their friends, but one of the problems probably is communication. So, a month and a bit will go by. There'll be people who are American residents who live over there. So that'll be an issue for September. I want to stay focused on the referral. Is there a way we can improve communication to those folks? 7 or 8 road allowances encompass a lot of people, and then how far back it goes. I think one of the issues that I saw in the emails was how it was or wasn't, in this case, communicated to them. So I don't know if Jasmine, or whether it's going to be a letter to these folks as to how they'll find out in September.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I think we can be careful that we don't exclude any communications options that are available to us. So whether it's public notice, by mail, not so many people read the newspaper anymore, especially if they're visitors or like a seasonal resident whose home base is somewhere else. Social media and other outward forms of communication that we have at the city. And also just using the residents themselves. I know there's a number of homeowners associations, some of which have their own methods of communication, including social media. So I think if the director can work with the communication staff, we can make sure that we get the best reach possible of these public meetings in terms of, and I pluralized it there partly because I was going to say in terms of how best to meet and communicate with the public and gather input, as well as do outreach in terms of before or after Labor Day. Maybe we can do something in August before Labor Day and something after Labor Day, and space it out a little bit time-wise. If there's an opportunity for more than one, I don't want to presuppose the director's work plan, but we can gather the best commentary, because August is a hard time to get residents who are on vacation or visiting other places. But also beyond Labor Day, I've heard anecdotally that some American property owners don't have as much availability on this side of the border for a public meeting. So if we can take those couple of things away, talk about them at work over the next few days, and make sure we come out with a communications plan that effectively meets council's objectives, I think that we can satisfy your queries.
No, just throw it on the back, the big table. Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to put a list at the back. It's a public meeting list. Put your name, phone number, and email address on it, and then we can give that to our staff, so that those that sign it will at least get the information out to them. So, and then you can communicate that to your neighbors and friends out there also.
I think, if I can jump in, through your worship to the public who are watching possibly on YouTube or live stream or in the gallery today, we can certainly take names at the clerk's office. If you don't have that email address, I think we have, I'll make sure before I'm done speaking here, cityclerk@portcolborne.ca. That's city clerk with no punctuation at portcolborne.ca. And we can register people and make sure they're notified of any public meetings that we're going to have, or public information sessions. And if that's shared widely, that'll help us with our outreach.
Okay. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the city clerk received a few emails on this. Are we going to gather those?
We'll include those, because they've already sent them. We can include those.
And certainly I have more than 10, probably 50. I'd be happy to share with you if you're not copied on those.
Perfect. Yep, anytime council gets it forward to the clerk's department. So, not debatable. Anything more to add to this, council? Because we can add based on date and what's included as a referral back to staff. Councillor Baggy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some people don't necessarily have email addresses. Can we have people could actually call into our customer service downstairs and leave their name and number, and customer service can take care of those people?
Yep, that's no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The amount of emails, I don't think anybody out there does not have an email address. So, Councillor Danch.
don't these people, not to say it that way, but like you have your Lorraine Association, do you not? Where we could communicate with the Lorraine Association?
Yeah, and some people have indicated their associations in their emails to us, but certainly anybody, whether it's one member of the association can help look after all of them, but other peoples of those associations have also sent emails to the clerk's office, my office, counselors. So, you hope that, obviously, the chair of that association will let their members know, which I'm sure they have. Okay, anything further? So it is a referral to the end of September 24th, I believe, is the meeting. It'll be, staff will put together a public meeting. The paper is at the back. They can email, they can call. Anything to add? All in favor? That's carried. So, before we go on to the next one, I just want to make sure, because we did have some delegations. The reason why we did it this way is the fact that if you got up and spoke tonight, and this went out to a referral after everybody spoke, so it goes out like we've asked, and comes back, can't speak again. It's almost like it's the same continuous meeting. So to allow you to talk publicly with our staff, and what report comes back based on that conversation, and you want to make remarks at that time, it allows you to actually come up and make those remarks. So this is the best way to do it, because we always hate to see to cut people off, but there are procedural bylaws we have to follow, and that's the reason why we've chosen this route. Quite frankly, it is in your best interest to do it this way, where we take your information and then it comes back to us. So I appreciate your concern on this and your patience this evening. So that's carried. So on to the order here. If you guys want to leave, well, how about we give you a few minutes to leave, and then you don't have to sit here and listen to us.
You don't have to, you can stay if you want.
But you can stay. Yeah, just remember, the sheets are at the back if you haven't emailed us.
Thank you for moving it forward.
Hey, no problem. Good seeing you.
Give them minutes to be loud.
Okay, we're gonna get back to our business here this evening. Item 8.1 is 2024 trimester 1 financial reporting, report number 2024-107. Recommendation that Corporate Services Department Report 2024-107 be received for information, and that the recommendation or the recommended transfers to and from the city's capital closeout account and related reserves as outlined in Appendix B of Corporate Services Report 2024-107 be approved, that the recommended reserve and capital and related project transferred as outlined in the financial section of Corporate Services Report 2024-107 be approved. Mr. Bowles.
Thank you. Now, through yourself, Mayor, to Council, I have a 10-slide presentation. Yep. If you don't, I can do that.
Go ahead.
No long-winded speeches, okay. And go. Okay, thank you, Council. So, and thank you, Mayor, for reading the lengthy recommendation. I put together this quick presentation. It summarizes trimester 1, and it has a quick look forward to what the rest of the year looks like. And in setting that up quickly, we just review our mission, vision, and corporate values to which we're operating under, and our strategic plan. So at a high level, you can see with the levy, we do use the current budget as our forecast mechanism still, because 4 months into the year, you're still pretty early. But we do, and we can see based on interest rates being substantially higher than I think we were looking at and what some forecasters were saying, investment income will be higher. When you actually look at our penalty and interest, we did anticipate the penalty and interest figure coming down. It hasn't. It's not because credit or more people aren't paying property taxes, water, wastewater rates. It's more that we were anticipating them to start to come down after we resolved a couple of other properties. They've just stayed constant. We have identified here, and just to make council aware, there are a number of grants that staff have been working on, and they've been in separate reports, but we've highlighted them here. And one of them that I think is quite significant is the Ontario Tourism Grant for $250,000 to help with some of the onloading and offloading with respect to the cruise ships, so that way they can accommodate and become part of our downtown. Some of the reductions, there weren't too many in the grant section based on budget, but one, just to point out, we used to get a Canada Day grant. It was about $15,000. It used to pay for the property tax or the fireworks at Canada Day. It got reduced. We found out that about 7 weeks before Canada Day, but we still went on with the fireworks, and it was a great show. And the OMPF funding, because we are growing, you are going to see the OMPF funding slowly get ratcheted back. We've also highlighted here, and I have a slide just to talk about the EVs. I know Councillor Bagu asks me almost every council where we are with respect to those, and the Director of Public Works will help me with respect to that. On the rate side, we are continuing to use our budget as our forecast. As the Director of Public Works pointed out, with some of the water projects ongoing, what we do point out here is the reserves funds. We have transferred and Council has approved since the budget an additional $3.3 million in projects. You did that just about 2 months ago, and we're just highlighting that those transfers were approved. On the capital project side, which I know is where a lot of the residents and a lot of the councillors are looking at, this is kind of a summary of the number of projects. We started with 77 projects. The budget added 33. In T1, and you can see we added 12 rate projects, water, wastewater, and storm. That made up the $3 million. They were all added. So we had 123 projects approved. In the first 4 months of the year, we closed out 17 with 106 in total. And then you can kind of see where the projections are when that's going to get done. So by the end of August, there's about 12 more projects to be done. By the end of the year, there's about 58 projects, which should leave us with about 36 projects by the end of the year, which means we've cut our number of projects from opening to the end of the year by about half. And I think that's what Council was looking for. So I'll say kudos to the Director of Public Works for getting a number of those projects done, because most are in his side. A couple things just on the recommendations. We do have a reserve policy to which we try to maintain the working capital reserve and our subject matter expert reserve at a certain level, and recognizing the investment incomes, we are recommending that we transfer to keep those at that level. Just a reminder for council, municipalities, and I think everybody knows this, we're kind of an interesting animal. We don't get to, as a corporation, we don't have the ability to issue shares to raise capital or to issue pref shares. We have to, based on the tax dollars that we get in, be able to fund our operation. So the reason why we have the working capital reserve is we set that aside because there's always changing and there's timing and payments. Sometimes taxpayers pay them right away, sometimes they don't, same with water users. Sometimes bills will come in ahead of time or ahead of schedule. So the working capital reserve acts as the float to be able to make sure that we can balance the cash flow from period to period. And the subject matter expert reserve is really our reserve for our reserve policy that is just in case there is some sort of long-term litigation issue or something that may come up. That's what council draws on to do that. And then the last recommendation, I have a couple slides on it, and it is to move forward with the work that Public Works is doing with respect to the electric EV charging stations. They have put together, and they've been working with, and this has now gone to the Environmental Committee to have an initial conversation on a number of locations. It's a very comprehensive plan that they're working on with a total of 30 locations going forward, or 30, I guess, EV charging stations that would go forward. Right now, we have $40,000 set aside. Ultimately, the project is going to cost upwards of $200,000. Our job as a municipality will be to bring the electrical requirements to each of the sites, and then the third-party company that we're working with, they'll pay for the EV chargers and put them at each of the locations. We do have a grant application out that we hope to be able to cover off part of the difference to which we're proposing here. So if we do put aside the $66,000 that we've recommended from the projected surplus, we'd be at 106. Total project's 200. We've applied for a grant to try to make up most of the difference. We'll come back to council in the future to see what that difference is. We should know about that grant within about 6 weeks or 6 or 8 weeks. Director of Public Works, he's given me something like that. In the meantime, he's going to continue working on the construction and plans for it, and then we'll bring back the final report. Again, we've taken this now to the Environmental Committee. I think everybody's very much in favor of it. And we have talked to the BIAs as well, and we're working with WeeStreem because they have some concerns about where we would put it. So we're trying to make adjustments for that. But again, I think kudos to everybody working on the project. It's a very comprehensive plan. I haven't seen too many municipalities with this many EV chargers that are going to go across its park and facility networks. Lastly, just to give everybody an update on our reserve balances, just as an acronym, WIP stands for Work in Progress. So that's the total reserve before we get to the funds that are actually already allocated to capital, which Public Works is spending. And then the negative balance is because there is that internal loan with Sugarloaf Marina, which they're paying back over a number of years. Last thing is just a highlight looking forward with respect to debt management. And this looks at our debt levels going forward. And you can see in 2025, we're forecasting that we'll debenture about $10 million. That $10 million was previously approved by council. Actually, one of the projects that the Director of Public Works mentioned today refers to that. That's the relining of the wastewater pipes. And council, remember, we're relining 1/3 of the city's wastewater pipes over the next 3 years, and that'll be the debenture with respect to that. There is a follow-up report on another water project that's coming forward tonight. It talks about using about $4.3 million from a water reserve. Council will know if and you've read the report. We actually we have about $750,000 in that water reserve. So ultimately, as that project progresses, we'll come back with a subsequent report to debenture the rest of the funds going forward. But you can also see with respect to ARL, for those that don't know, that's our annual repayment limit. That's how much of the total levy is being spent on debt. And you can see the majority of the tax dollars that we do get in are not spent on debt. In 2024, 4.1% of all dollars that we bring in is spent on debt. The city has a maximum imposed at 15%, and the province has a maximum imposed at 25%. And then you can just see as our debt levels are coming down, even with the forecasted debt. And then looking forward, I think financially, October 16th, we'll bring back the capital and the levy budget. I think we heard tonight that the region's proposing from Councillor Davies, or their initial look is a 9% increase. We're still putting ours together right now, but we do not see anything in that neighborhood. I can assure council of that. And then the rate budget will come forward in November. And that's the quick update.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Questions, I'll go to Councillor Begg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Usually we don't like sending in your presentations, but this one wasn't bad, so thanks again. I do have one question on your report on Appendix B. It's the capital related project summary, and I can about read it to you. It's the Wallen Street site remediation, $128,484. And I'd just like to remind staff, to ask them if they remember that before any monies are spent on this project, it has to come back to council. That was from last council or the beginning of this council.
Through the mayor to the councillor, the West Street Waterfront Center you're referring to, right?
The West Street site remediation.
Oh, I think Gary's going to take.
Wallen Street, sorry.
Through you.
W's confuse me all the time.
Mr. Lon?
Through you, Your Worship, I can confirm that this matter will come back to council. As council knows, there have been a number of closed session discussions, just given some litigation, potential litigation, and solicitor-client communications, but it will be coming back.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll get my W's straight.
Further questions? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Great job, Brian. I think what I would like to see is more of the good works we're doing. When we talked about in the past the capital budget and how we're on track in the top third of the region of having enough capital budget annually to sustain building replacement, fleet, the whole roads, all underground. But it's a painful pill. The first 2% of every tax bill is basically going into capital so that we don't be part of the infrastructure deficit that everybody's having. I'd like to see that story get told, but I don't know whether it's in a tax bill or whatever. And also I've had, with the region's increase with taking over transit and that, more than I've ever had with the affordability crisis going on as to the kind of tax rates citizens are experiencing. With the pessimism, a lot of it rightly deserved, the tax bill comes with the city of Port Colborne's name on it, and you pay it to this address. But, when half the bill isn't ours, it's not spin to be telling people the truth. That, somebody's got to pick up the phone and also call the region. When we're in being voted in here, I feel responsible for all the things that we can control. But I'd like the people who are on the other end of that, whether it's, waste management, transit, region, the things that I can't help the taxpayer with, but I want them to know where it's coming from, and I want them to be as diligent as they are with us, because I think what I've seen happening over, especially the last 10 years, as more and more governments, local governments are taking things on that, and I don't want to stray too far off topic here. I'm really looking for a pie chart at the end of the day of what everybody pays in their tax bill. And I'm looking for the phone numbers and the emails of who you need to contact, because the person getting that bill, I know isn't concerned about where it's coming from, but, you know, we can do damage to city projects by going from 4% to 2%. But if another level of government eats up that room, we're worse off and they're better off. And I can only, and my colleagues can only control what we can do. So I don't know if you can put in why we're spending 2% on capital so that the next generation isn't faced with we're all facing and paying for the mistakes of the past. It's not just a good news story, it happens to be the truth. And I'd like to see more of that out there if we could in our communications plan. Thank you, Worship.
Okay. There you go. Questions? Further questions? Seeing none, if I could have Councillors Bagu and Hoyle move the 2024-107 report. All in favor? That's carried. Next is report 2024-148. Chief Administrative Office report 2024-148 be received, and that the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum be granted an exemption from bylaw 7026/63/22 to permit the discharge of firearms without ammunition for a historical demonstration during the 2024 Canal Days Marine Heritage Festival, and that the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum be granted an exemption from bylaw 5642/73/11 to permit camping on the museum grounds for a historical demonstration during the 2024 Canal Days Marine Heritage Festival.
I don't think this was lifted. I think you're on 8.4.
Oh, I apologize. I do apologize.
8.4 Oil Mill Creek.
Yeah, it was. That's right. Sorry, that was already done, guys. You've already done that. Good job. 8.4 has been added in, which is 2024-141. The Public Works Department report 2024-141 be received. That the council direct the drainage superintendent to advance the Oil Mill Creek Municipal Drain Engineer's report to a meeting to consider in accordance with Section 41, Chapter D.17 of the Drainage Act. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Bodnar move that, and we do have two delegations with regards to this. Our first delegation is Kathy Kalanick.
Hi, everybody.
Just state your name and address, please.
Oh, Kathy Kalanick, 851 Pinecrest. So I'm here, and I wasn't aware, probably there was some rule, but I didn't comprehend it, that once I address this now, I can't come back and address it when you do the meeting to consider?
No. New information you can bring back, but you got to remember, all we're doing is advancing this to the next level based on the Drainage Act.
Yes.
So we're not here to discuss money,
No.
all that stuff. So we're just following the Drainage Act here.
So
there will be another meeting though.
Any of you recall this report from February 23rd, 2022? Anybody? Anybody want to do a synopsis, short, you know, what you figured it was about? Because I don't see anywhere in here where it mentions doing a retention pond. But somehow the report has morphed into a retention pond. And you hired a engineer in 2019. Can anybody remember what the issue was in 2019 that you hired an engineer who the costs are, for him, are now estimated at $270,000. Anybody?
So I'm gonna kind of hold you up there, because that's not what we're here to discuss.
Yeah, it
We're here-
is.
No, actually,
Yeah.
it's not. That is a future meeting. We're trying to move this along so we
Right.
can move. So if I can, I'm gonna have the drainage superintendent come up and explain the process, just so everybody understands what needs to be done here.
So
So all we're doing is approving, moving along. Nobody's approving all kinds. I just want to make sure the drainage superintendent comes up. So I'm going to have the drainage superintendent come up to the front here and explain exactly what's going on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of the report this evening is just a formality of the Drainage Act, asking council to give us the approval as staff to issue the report to all of the assessed members, assessed landowners within the drainage report. Like I said, it's just a formality of the Drainage Act. With proceeding forward with moving that report to all of the assessed landowners, there will also be a notification of when the meeting to consider will be. In the report this evening, that's tentatively set for September 3rd at 6:30 here at Council Chambers. Once we've had the meeting to consider, or once we're at the meeting to consider, any assessed landowner within the watershed can bring forward their concerns. At that meeting, it wouldn't discuss costs, but the residents can bring forward their concerns if they feel that the engineer has overdone, underdone, whatever their thoughts may be. From that point, there will be a court of revision date where those individuals can appeal their assessment if they feel that they've been assessed too high or too low. Following that, there will be or can be a tribunal hearing, which again is a second point of appeal. At that point of appeal, any of the assessed landowners can appeal the construction that the engineer has proposed if they don't feel it's correct. For example, if they don't feel that there should be a retention pond in the watershed, then they could appeal that. It would be up to the tribunal to decide if that is or isn't correct. Following the tribunal decision, we bring this back to council, and council would do the final reading of the bylaw, and the report would be completely adopted at that point, and we would proceed forward with the changes from the court of revision, the changes from the tribunal, and proceed forward with the construction.
Yeah, so our next public meeting is where the questions that Ms. Kalanick's asking tonight do come forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor.
Thank you. I'm sure if there were people here for oil mill and they did hear Ms. Vanderveen, they may have satisfied them. But I'm just wondering, because you're here, if there are any issues that weren't clear, what you just said, if perhaps you could just move to the back room for 5 minutes and you can get their questions answered.
Certainly. Yeah, that's easy. She'll do that. Councillor?
Kathy, if you can go to page 7, when you're back there, go to page 17 of that report, and it talks about a drain water quality improvement, possible wetland or pond implementation. So just to let you know, it is in there, but tonight isn't the night to discuss that, so thanks.
They don't have numbers. Not the ones, none of the ones that I have numbers. So my question is,
Your microphone?
I'm the type of person that you start out doing the thing that costs the least, and then you work up if need be to get to like a retention pond. And the city hasn't been doing the least part. They haven't been maintaining the ditches. If you maintain the ditches, then you don't have the issues with the flooding.
Again, I'm going to cut you off. Sorry, Kathy, I'm going to cut you off again. That's not what we're here discussing tonight. That's for the September meeting.
But by the September meeting, then you're going to be doing the project. Then you're going to, the meeting to consider, and you're going to rubber stamp it.
Kathy, that's not the order. all we're doing is we're sending it to a public meeting in September where you can discuss all this. That's not why we're here tonight.
But
We're
then
moving, excuse me. We're moving this forward based on the Drainage Act. This is our obligation under the Drainage Act. This is just a formality to state we're going to another public meeting and the whole process follows the Drainage Act. So that's all we're doing tonight. We're not approving anything other than saying we're moving forward to allow people to come and comment. There are courts of revision, there's tribunals. As I say, it follows the whole program. I've done one of these when I was a city councillor. It took 15 years by the time one gentleman kept stalling it. I think we finally got that drain done, I think, our last term, and it took that long. So that's what the whole process is. We're not here tonight discussing this. That's not why we're here. But I would tell you, come in September. Bring your stuff in September, ask a million questions in your 10 minutes.
But my 10 minutes is up?
No, I said in September with your 10 minutes. But I'm just saying, be very precise at the September meeting so when you come forward with your questions, then the people that are supposed to be answering those will be here. But this is not what this meeting's about.
But I heard Alana say there's a tribunal where you can appeal
down,
your assessment.
That's down the road. Again, that's not under our rules. That's under Province of Ontario Drainage Act, and we have to follow the rules. We have no other way to do this. That's what we have to follow. So there is a process, and there's steps. There's a whole bunch of steps, and Alana will lead you through that whole thing. But all we're saying is we're moving now to the public process, which is a public meeting here, and then everything else follows right after that.
So do I have your assurance that this isn't a done deal? And by the next meeting, I can come in here and say all the reasons why it is not necessary and all the things that you should be doing before you get to this. And you'll say, okay, then we won't rubber stamp this at the meeting.
So the public meeting in September is to gather more information, then the final report will come when, approximately?
The final report has been submitted to the clerk already.
The engineer's report has. But the final report for us to pass all this is after the next public meeting, yes. So that's, again, another step after the public meeting.
So
before it even comes to us to say yay or nay, or make changes or whatever it is.
There's no yay or nay at the September 3rd proposed meeting. No yay or nay.
Right?
If you say yes, then, sorry.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at the September 3rd meeting, you as council will be given the opportunity to either accept or reject the report. And it's up to you to choose whether you wish to accept or reject it based on whatever evidence or concerns people have.
That evening.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. And it can be moved down the road if we wanted to, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we could defer it or refer it back to you if council decides to make changes based on what people say. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Councillor?
I was just going to say, accept or reject the engineer's report, not like the final product.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be accept or reject the engineer's report as is, so it would be provisionally adopted, where it would have a first and second reading. Yes. Then we would go through the process of the court of revision, the process of the tribunal, if there are appeals for both of those, and then we would come back to council for the third and final reading, adopting the entire report.
So just so that Kathy and everybody else is clear, there are steps in place that will allow for correction if needed throughout the process to address residents' concerns before we ever get to that final.
In simple terms, just tell me.
Yes.
Come to September meeting.
September 3rd won't be a done deal.
Correct.
For the retention pond. That's what I'm asking.
That's correct, right?
I want public input on September 3rd without it being a done deal.
According to my drainage superintendent, her answer is?
Yes.
Thank you. There you go. Thanks, Kathy.
All right.
Please put your questions together for all that for September 3rd.
I killed some trees today.
We appreciate it, Kathy.
Just to let you guys know.
Oh, your button again? Sorry.
Just to let you guys know the reason why I'm so passionate about this. The schedule of assessment says that we will be assessed $16,502 for our portion of this. If any of you can say, I can handle that, have at her. But we're 66-year-old retirees, trying to retire, but my husband isn't. Because what are we doing? We're supporting you guys. Our municipal taxes to you, $9,782 this year. And with your new thing that you have come up with, where you immediately bill us in the year of the expenditure, that's going to be a hell of a bill to pay that year. Add $16,000 onto the 10,000-ish that we already have in 1 year.
Drainage, we've allowed Mr. Bowles' staff to speak with those that have a bill over, I can't remember, it was an amount that it could be spread over time. So Mr. Bowles, do you want to give an update on that?
Yeah.
With interest.
Through the mayor, traditionally we've allowed up to 5 years, but council's recently given us the ability to look at longer periods in certain situations.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll see you in September.
For sure.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay. And Mr. Stenziani is coming up again.
I now understand a bit better what the process is, so thank you. But just I'm not clear if it makes sense to have a drain or to have a pond or nothing, but the one thing I don't understand is I did look at the schedule and it's very unclear as to how the costs are allocated. So, for example, we have a half acre, it's costing us $400. It's not significant for us. It's not a big deal. I mean, for Kathy, $16,000 is huge. So I feel for her, and it's a huge amount of money. But then it's not clear how the money is proportioned. And so maybe for the next meeting, if it's possible to
Or what we can do is have you speak with the drainage superintendent in the back room.
Right.
And then she can give you some little bit of update on that.
Yeah, okay.
And then whatever questions with regards to the engineer's report will be looked after in September.
Because, for example, there's a lot next door that's half the size of mine, but they're paying 1/50th of what we're paying. Not that it's significant, but it just doesn't feel like all the numbers make sense.
Alana?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, all of the engineer's thoughts and how we put together his assessments, he will discuss that at the meeting to consider.
Okay, can you just give him the Coles notes this evening, though? I think that's
Is it possible to have it in advance so that?
Just quick.
Yes.
Quickly, if you could. Yeah, just gives them some confidence going on here that when they come in September, they've got a little bit more knowledge of what they're going to ask.
And also, my wife subscribed as a delegation this morning to speak because she's got some points, but somehow it didn't come up. She sent an email this morning.
Our clerk said she did not receive one.
Okay. Sent to the deputy clerk at portcolborne.ca.
Yeah, those come to the clerk's office. So what I can do is I can ask staff to waive procedural bylaw with regards to letting somebody speak. If somebody wants to move that, Councillor Bruno, seconded. Councillor Bagu, we'll allow you to come up and speak. Come on up.
Thank you.
Thank you. I press.
Christine Allen, 2591 Fire Lane 3. If I can just, a couple of questions for clarification on the actual report. There's talk of 2 public meetings previously held on this subject. I'm aware of one because I attended the one in November. I have no clue when the first one was held. So there can be some clarification as to when that meeting was held and time, date,
We'll
please.
get the drainage superintendent
Because I'm
to
not sure
look that
how
up.
many people
Certainly.
were aware of that very first meeting.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a notification that was sent in the mail to all property owners assessed in the previous engineer's report on February 2nd, 2022. That meeting was held via Zoom. Unfortunately, on the letter, I did make an error, and I stated that the meeting date was February 23rd, 2021, which might have been kind of difficult being a year prior. However, I did make an apology at the Zoom meeting stating that there was an error on the letter. And if there was any concerns, to definitely contact me.
Okay, so I can assume from that a majority of the landowners on the assessment probably weren't aware of that first meeting. I would assume that. Just another note on the report, which refers to the road authority to provide drainage for landowners in the Bell Acres subdivision. This request was for a 5th branch that would extend north, blah, blah. Although this would be an added cost to the residents of the subdivision. So I was understanding from the previous meeting that all the costs for the drainage was allocated equally to all the assessed landowners. So I'm not quite sure what that refers to. I'm not in Bell Acres subdivision, but I'm confused by that statement as to would they then be allocated a higher cost because of that work that would be suggested.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, that would be a perfect question for the engineer at the September 3rd meeting. He can give a complete explanation of how the assessments were done. But I can certainly chat afterwards.
Certainly. Good.
Okay, so I think that's it. There's just a couple of the meeting, the first meeting. I don't know if we did a poll. Is there any way of knowing how many people attended that meeting? Because I know we didn't get any notification.
There was approximately 30 people that had registered.
Okay.
Okay.
So as far as I'm concerned, the meeting on November 27th was really the first public meeting that everybody would have been aware of this engineer's report and the discussion on that. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you. Questions on the report, councillors? All those in favor? That's carried. Next is the Pocomar Agreement, Report 2024-138, that Corporate Services Department Report 2024-138 be received, that Council approve the Mayor, Acting Clerk, Manager, Recreation, and Marina Supervisor to enter into an agreement, Appendix A, for auxiliary marine search and rescue service with Pocomar Marine Auxiliary Rescue. I have Councillor Bruno. Want to question on that?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Glad to see that we're updating these agreements and that Pocomar is there at the table, increasing the funding because time has moved on and inflation has moved on. My only concern was those who were around at the beginning of Pocomar's request from the city. It used to come to the Port Colborne Fund or the Hydro Fund. And because we had agreed at the time that this was something that we were going to do every year, we said, why leave it discretionary to the committee? Let's embed it in the budget, something we're always going to be doing. Doesn't need to come to that committee with discretionary grants. The one thing I liked about the agreements up until this one is first and foremost, we, the city or the granting agency, always paid the liability insurance. And that was great for them. And it was great for us because, as you know, if something goes wrong, they'll go after the organization, they'll still go after the city. And the only thing that I found missing in this was we've upped the dollars, but we haven't made the fact that insurance should be, Mr. Bowles, perhaps the first thing that comes out. So we as a municipality know they have liability insurance. And that helps us. So I'm wondering if you could go back and maybe talk to them that we want to make sure that their liability insurance is paid and not just be giving them 30 and they spend on something else and then there's an accident. That was my only question, Mr. Mayor.
Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor, staff agree, we can beef up the language with respect to that. Right now, we do have some provisions around insurance, but we can add something to make sure that payments made before future grants are provided.
Yeah, that's fine, because they do supply us with a certificate every year to prove that they do have insurance. So, okay? Further questions? Councillor?
Through you, Your Worship, not so much a question, just a comment. Just want to say thank you to you, Director Bowles, for working with Pocomar and to come up with an agreement, because it's my understanding based on our conversations that a previous agreement may not have existed, or if it did, it wasn't written or can't be found. So I think this provides something that's tangible and good for both the city of Port Colborne and for Pocomar. So thank you for your efforts in this.
Okay. Questions? I've got Councillor Bruno, seconded by Councillor Beauregard. All in favor? Carried. Item 8.6 is the Tourism Strategy and Tactical Plan, report number 2024-145, and our recommendation is that Corporate Services Department report 2024-145 be received, which our presentation will start shortly. Mr. Higginbotham, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I don't have a presentation prepared this evening, but a report was completed and the tourism strategy and tactical plan attached to that report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that Council may have.
Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Fantastic job on this. Normally we pay a consultant to do that, and this I thought was very thorough, very thought-provoking, but basically very clear, direct, and straightforward, honest. And it does talk about, as much as I'm pleased that it touches a whole bunch of points and deals with it, I'm pleased that it also tells the truth about what isn't in it and what isn't costed in it, so that there's no discrepancy. And the one thing I just wanted to get moved forward, and I'm not expecting you to have the answer tonight, but I very much believe that one of the things that's lacked through the years in our tourism strategy is data collection. And I think that in order to have a strategy, you need to have numbers and facts and strategy. And it does clearly say that it's the desire of the municipality, once the MAT tax perhaps expands and brings in more money, that I think there were 3 pillars that it didn't pay for. But I'd like to see data collection system put in. And so I guess I would like to know, so that I can try and champion that for budget deliberations, if you'd be able to come back and give me or council a idea of what that data collection component would cost.
Through the mayor to Councillor Bruno, that is absolutely something that I can prepare for a future meeting. What I would do is come up with a number of options based on the tourism strategy that I've presented, cost those options out, and also give reasons for why I've made those choices, and put the decision making back into council to see if you agree with my recommendations to move forward with what I've proposed in the tourism strategy is a more robust and fulsome visitor data collection system, which I think we need in order to make informed decisions about the tourism strategy itself and the future of tourism in Port Colborne.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I had.
Okay. Further questions? Councillor Bodnar.
Just a comment. I think we've seen our tourism capabilities skyrocket since Greg's been on board, and I do some work at the Tourism Partnership in Niagara with Greg, and he's well respected there, and just actually took on a chairmanship of a committee, which is a big deal for us when that is sometimes dominated by bigger communities in the region.
Like Niagara Falls?
Yeah, funny you mention that, Mr. Mayor. That was on my mind. But anyways, thank you, Greg, for everything you're doing, and it's nice to see these reports that we can see where we're going and taking steps and taking advantage of anything we got. Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, if I could have Councillors Bruno and Bodnar move that. All in favor? That's carried. Urban Forest Management Plan, report number 2024-144. Our recommendation is that Public Works Department report 2024-144 be received. That the Urban Forest Management Plan in Appendix A for Public Works report 204-144 be approved. And you do have a presentation.
I do.
I know that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm Cassandra Banting, Manager of Environmental Services, and here just to walk you through some of the findings in our Urban Forest Management Plan. So we'll just double check that this works. Oh, maybe. Oh, maybe not. We need the young folks to do the tech for us now. Perfect, thank you. There we go. Perfect. So just a short presentation today, not too long, but I'll just go over an overview of the Urban Forest Management Plan. I'll talk about the summary of the tasks that were completed as part of this project, a summary of some of the findings, and then what the city's operating plan and some of the recommendations that we'll do moving forward that came out of this project. So, perfect, yeah, I don't. The top, okay, the top just gets a little bit cut off, but this is just our project team and timeline. So the city retained Williams and Associates Forestry Consulting with support from McNeil Urban Forestry to complete the city's first urban forest management plan. So the project sort of kicked off in 2022. So it's been a multi-year plan where we conducted some windshield surveys, drove around, started looking at our tree canopy from that aspect, and also conducted a tree canopy analysis. And then we moved into policy reviews and assessments. We did some public consultation. We completed a tree inventory where we actually itemized out every tree, public tree in the city. And then we had our draft plan, and now we're bringing it to council. So it's been a long haul, but we're excited to bring it here tonight. So what the Urban Forest Management Plan does is it provides us a benchmark and assessment of the city's current urban forest. So it looks at where we're currently at, and then it helps us set some goals and reach those goals, to have a plan for that. So in our council strategic plan, we have set a goal to grow the tree population. The specific measure in that strat plan is to increase the canopy cover to 40% by 2040, and we're currently at 32%, and that's in our urban areas, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So we've set a target for this, so this helps kind of lay the foundation and the framework for how we can achieve this. The Urban Forest Management Plan does aim to proactively guide the preservation, management, and enhancement of the city's municipal trees and forests on publicly owned lands. Specifically, we are focusing on in the urban area. The goal also was to create a 5-year operational plan that I will present at the end as well, and transition the city from a reactive to a proactive urban forest management. So trying to get ahead of things a little bit more, not as reactive when a tree falls down or we have issues, trying to get ahead of that proactively. And this will in turn, help increase operational efficiency and effectiveness for our operations group, improve tree health and diversity, reduce risk to the public, and increase benefits provided by a healthy and sustainable urban forest. So the vision that we set out in our urban forest management plan is the City of Port Colborne recognizes and values the environmental, social, cultural, and economic contribution of the urban forest to our community. So we absolutely recognize the importance of this. The city will, in partnership with its residents, business, stakeholders, work to promote an increase in urban forest coverage that is diverse, healthy, and a sustained asset for future generations. So there are some challenges, of course, that Port Colborne faces, unlike other municipalities, but during our assessment, we did discover that between the years of 2006 and 2018, the municipal tree canopy did decline approximately 0.33% each year. So this is kind of when we compare to other municipalities, they are also seeing a decline, but ours is a little bit higher. And some of the other challenges that came out right at the start of this project is Port Colborne does have a lack of species diversity, and there's definitely some challenges there. 42% of our public trees are of a single genus, the maple tree, right? Those are common. That's, again, not uncommon across municipalities in the area. There's a high proportion of maples, and that makes trees more susceptible to catastrophic population loss from threats like climate change and invasive species. So the urban tree canopy cover does continue to decline and is likely to continue unless we take some steps and properly manage this moving forward. So it was time to make some changes.
So Cassandra,
Of course.
Can you go back to that one?
Of course.
So with regards to us being higher than other municipalities, I would think that's because of the ash borer, because we had so much ash tree in Port Colborne.
That is correct. Yeah,
So,
that in part did lead to that. Absolutely. And other municipalities got hit with that as well, but we did have a lot of ash trees, and so over those years, that did make a significant impact.
Just so people don't know we're out cutting down trees
Yes.
without a reason. I mean, they were dying. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. So our urban forest management plan, we set out some vision and goals. So I'll just go through these, but protect existing public trees and encourage the retention of private trees. Increase the canopy cover over 10 years to help mitigate climate change through tree protection, planting, and maintenance. Increase native tree planting to enhance biodiversity and connectivity. Ensure the creation of beautiful treed and healthy places for people to enjoy. Increase education and awareness opportunities around tree planting and the benefits of trees. Improve economic opportunities and tourism through greater canopy cover. We know that trees help make our city look beautiful, and that's an important component. Manage the risks that trees pose to an acceptable level for residents and visitors alike. So we also know there's challenges with trees. We do get a lot of storms in Port Colborne, things like that. So we still have to manage that risk associated with beautiful big old trees and trying to be proactive with that. So the project undertook a number of different tasks. So like I already mentioned, we did conduct a municipal tree inventory. We did conduct a review of our tree bylaw and our tree installation policy. So we've had some consultants help us review those items. We did a detailed tree canopy change analysis in Zone 1. So we used that sort of as a proxy to look at the entire city. We conducted staff interviews. We did canopy cover and plantable spaces assessment. We conducted windshield surveys of the street and park trees, so where we literally just drive around and get a feel for the trees in the community. We conducted a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats assessment. So just looking overall at our programs, what are some of the challenges that staff and that others face? We did a criteria and indicators for sustainable urban forest management. So some of these things just help us benchmark where we are as staff too, and what we're doing compared to other municipalities. So this allows us to kind of see where we're at, and then we can compare and improve. And then also there were communication engagement opportunities. So the city was was set up or divided into 6 different zones, and zones 1, 2, 3, and 4 are more of our urban core, our urban center, and then zones 5 are those smaller urban areas as well, and then zone 6 is entirely rural. So this is just a map of the tree inventory that was done as well, just to get a feel for some of that data. So now the city actually has a GIS, a mapping layer of all the trees. And we can manage this moving forward too. So when we plant trees, we can add to this layer. When we do maintenance on these trees or take them down for whatever reason, we can update. We have an active list, which is a great place to start out at. So some of the summary of the findings as part of that task, it was evident in the tree inventory that we have a lot of maple trees, as indicated on the graph on the left-hand side. So we do need to prioritize non-maples and young trees for planting, which when you're planting trees, they typically are young. Because the graph on the right, the blue, the front graph there, is an example of an uneven age forest, which is actually what you want. You want to have some of those younger trees, and then they move into the older trees. And right now, the distribution that Port Colborne has is the orange bars behind the blue there. And we have a lot of the middle-sized trees, which actually isn't a sign of as healthy of a forest or urban forest as we'd like. So we do have a low proportion of trees with high and imminent risks or maintenance requirements. So during our inventory and our drive-through, we did notice that there were trees that needed some maintenance right away, low-hanging branches, any safety concerns, and staff did address those right away as well. And another recommendation is implement an ongoing tree maintenance program based on a year-to-year operating budget. And I'll speak to that a little bit more, but we are proposing that as well. So as part of the windshield survey, all zones were assessed and they were assigned a low, medium, a high maintenance needs. So again, just kind of speaking to that, but this is the outcome of that. We had a map indicate what areas to focus on, and we created work orders for that. And our roads and park staff were able to take care of those high maintenance requirement needs right away. So we did do a tree canopy change analysis. A proxy was done in Zone 1 for the city's total tree canopy for urban areas. And so this is where I spoke to one of those challenges already. But between 2006 and 2018, the tree canopy had dropped 30% for municipal trees and 25% for private property. So we saw that total decline specifically for those trees. So one of the next assessments that we did complete was a canopy cover and plantable spaces assessment. So the results of our canopy cover analysis suggest that there's high canopy cover within the municipal boundary. So this is across all of those zones. So we have a lot of trees within the municipal boundary of Port Colborne. We're at 37%. And that's because we have a lot of woodlots out there. So that absolutely contributes to that. The tree canopy, though, within the city, the urban areas, is only 32%. And 10% of that is specifically the trees, and then you have your broader forest canopy as well. So we did find there were nearly 6,000 municipal trees in the city, in the urban area, and on road allowances, parks, and facilities. So these are our public trees that we have that we inventoried. So we did look at areas that are lacking trees, and so I know there's a lot happening on this slide, but we separated our zones out. We just did zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so not the entire rural area. And we looked at our municipal road allowances, our municipal parks and facilities, private grass, and private other plantable spaces, and where we have space to plant trees, essentially. And then we go through our zones and we can look at the actual plantable percentage. So the table on the right-hand side, Zone 2 has 27.5% plantable area available for us to plant. So we should focus some efforts there. And some of these interpretations down below too. So zones 1, 2, and 3 have the highest proportion of plantable spaces on municipal road allowances. So we have a lot of road allowances available to plant trees. So this just helps us target and focus where we should be focusing our efforts with tree planting. And so staff have been out, and we've done our own assessment. We're out looking at areas. And some of these pictures here are staff-identified planting opportunities. So they're throughout the city where, you know, you can drive down these roads and you don't see any boulevard trees anymore, right? And so these are some of our priority spots. There's lots across the city. And we do have a plan to plant trees that I'll speak to that a little bit more. As part of this project, we also did conduct a review of our tree bylaw and our tree installation policy that we have at the city. So our bylaw will be updated to reflect some of this review and recommendations. So we're moving forward with that. And with a real focus on protecting trees and the urban forest, on city trees, and the urban forest as a whole. And then we can have specific policies to provide further guidelines for municipal tree planting and management. So we can always have some of the specifics move into a policy as well. We can have our bylaw and then have some specific policies. So we're still just kind of crafting that. We're looking at our options, but we are moving forward with that. So that will be great to have that updated as well. So I did mention too, we did this criteria and indicators assessment for the city. And so we did a self-assessment essentially. And it just provides direction to city staff more specifically on where we can focus our resources, where we might be lacking with tree management. It's recommended that we do this every 5 years, and we can do this in-house. This is just an internal exercise, and it's sort of a checkpoint. We have a benchmark of where we're at, and then this will help us just stay on track. So this is more just an internal staff kind of recommendation. And some of the recommendations out of the task that I've just spoke to as well include, so plant more trees annually, subject to amending the corporate tree installation policy. So we do have this corporate tree installation policy that doesn't really allow boulevard tree planting. And so we will refine that, we will remove that policy, but we are able to plant trees under the approval of our director. So that's what we're doing right now. And then again, transition maintenance from reactive to proactive. So just being more proactive, staying on top of trees. Again, now that we have the data, the GIS data of all of our trees, we can actually have a better tree maintenance priorities. We can go out and look at these trees in advance of getting complaints about them, that kind of thing. So we did do a public survey in 2023, recording the opinions on the importance of the Urban Forest Management Plan. The survey showed very strong support for the initiatives outlined in the plan. According to the respondents' ratings, the first 5 goals of the Urban Forest Management Plan were seen as very important. So we do have strong, support when we did our public engagement. And then there were some opportunities for additional comments. We intend to maintain public interest with trees moving forward. So we will expand our website with more information, continue with tree giveaways. We do have some of those activities planned as well, just to maintain that level of engagement with the community. And having different community partners as well will be important for that aspect, I think. So what we're proposing is a 5-year operating plan, and we had input from our consultants on this plan. And so what this plan does is it provides a roadmap for our strategic priorities with some timelines, staffing, and resource needs. So I'll show you the operational plan in just a moment. It helps guide us to implement these recommendations so that we actually have this plan, but how are we implementing this now? What are we doing? And, it helps come up with a plan for funding for our park and street side tree planting and maintenance to enhance this tree canopy so that we can meet the strategic plan goal that council has set. So we'll utilize public works staff, planning staff, and asset management staff to put this plan into action. It will take place, it's 2024 to 28. So already in 2024, we actually had a budget approval of $200,000 approved for tree planting. So that's the RFP, I believe, is going out very shortly, and we'll get started with a fall planting to plant these trees. And so staff, like I said, have done some initial analysis of where we're going. We'll do some soil sampling. We'll come up with the best trees to plant in the best locations, and we're doing that shortly. So just high level to sort of the strategic directions, the summary of all of these recommendations. So there were a number of recommendations in this report, which were great. And so trying to make sense of that, we've kind of categorized it into these 4 little buckets. So 1, we want to grow the urban forest. We're going to prioritize planting non-maples to improve species diversity. We want to plant more trees on municipal property to offset those historic removals. We will increase the number of municipal trees planted annually. So we're already getting started on that one. Engagement and partnerships is the next bucket on the top right there. So develop communication protocols for advanced landowner notification for maintenance activities. So before we do work on trees, make sure that we're giving the public notice and letting them know what's happening. And establishing some interdepartmental urban forest management working groups for tree establishment, removal, and management. So just working with our planning colleagues, making sure that we're looking at new subdivisions as well, looking at trees like holistically and not just from a public works operating lens, and making sure that we have our other departments at the table as well. And then collaborating with partners like the region or the NPCA, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. There's lots of tree initiatives out there, working with those folks to further advance what we can do as well. And so then on the bottom left, maintaining our urban forest that we currently have. So making sure we're implementing our tree maintenance and pruning program, prioritizing tree maintenance in those neighborhoods that were identified with high maintenance needs. Having a work order system to track these activities, to reflect those changes, and then to reflect the changes in the tree inventory. So we're building that in-house, and we're just making sure that our work order system, when we do maintenance on a tree, then we're actually updating our GIS layers so that we have an active live data set moving forward. And finally, protecting the urban forest moving forward. So we will be replacing the tree bylaw. We'll bring something to council with that, and preparing some policies around planting and management, and consider a tree canopy metric in the official plan too. So again, having some of these conversations with our planning folks. And then again, establishing this interdepartmental working group, and this is more for the planning of trees as well, not just the management of them. So this is our 5-year operating plan that we're proposing here, and so it starts with 2024, and I'll just kind of go through it a little bit, but so some of the things speak to adopting a tree inventory work order system. So we're actually able to do that in-house. We're going to use our existing systems to do that, which is great. We'll have an urban forest technical manual that our operations folks are going to help us develop for that. Have these working groups, have this annual operating plan that now we can revisit. And again, it's a plan, so every year we'll reassess and see where we're at. And budget urban forester or consulting services to help plan forestry activities and help administer the tree bylaw. So we actually think that we'll be able to do this within our existing operating budget, so no additional funds will need to be required for this one. Fund a proactive tree establishment program, so that's the big amount, the $200,000 that was already approved for this year, and staff are moving forward with that. And then a request will likely come with the 2025 budget to maintain that level. So really, fund the tree program for the next 5 years. And it does start to stagger off. So starting in 2026, we think we only need to plant about, it's less trees to get to our target. And then after 5 years, we will do a check-in with that. And then that last item too, so this indicates that it would be additional funds, but this is transitioning to our proactive tree maintenance program. We're actually able to do this in-house with our existing operational budget as well, so which is great. And then the next kind of few items are under our policy planning and development section. So again, having these working groups, conducting comprehensive policy review. So for all aspects of trees. So again, I already spoke to that a little bit, but we can do that in-house, updating the tree bylaw. So again, we have some funds to do that through our operating budget, our subject matter expert budget. We're able to do that. And yeah, reviewing strategy on private tree management. So we're going to review that and see what maybe makes sense and propose some things for council around that. Developing our new procedures around capital and construction processes. So again, just trying to tackle trees from every aspect there. Looking at new developments, things like that, and update our asset management plan to include public trees. And so that was done at the last asset management plan that was brought to council, did look at incorporate trees and used our tree inventory, in fact. So our monitoring plan progress, so in 5 years, we're recommending us to revisit our canopy cover assessment. So re-looking at that, have a snapshot in time again, see where we're at. We're dedicating resources. We're recommending a lot of tree planting for the next 5 years, but then in 5 years, we should come back. Once those trees are established, we'll have a better idea of where our tree canopy cover is. And doing that criteria and indicators, which is that sort of in-house assessment, looking at that every 5 years too. Just having a touch point, doing it every year doesn't really give us enough time to see results, so that's what we're anticipating there. So thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. I do have Councillor Bagu on the list first. So Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seemed like quite a while ago, past council, I walked into Mr. Schultz's office and asked him if he could get a photograph of the city of Park Colborne, the tree cover. And I told him what I wanted was, to eventually increase the trees. And I must say, staff have taken an amazing leap to get to this point here, and I am so impressed with staff and past council who approved it, this council who continue to approve it, and I think it's just super, and it's way more than I thought we'd ever get to. One question I have is our plantings, our new plantings to increase biodiversity and connectivity, how much percentage of native plants are we going to plant that to ensure the plants can adapt to future climate conditions? Like we say, we're not going to plant no Norway maples, but the native trees, how much percentage? I guess that's the number I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So our consultants have recommended planting at least about 80% of native tree species. There are some situations where native species actually might not do as well. And I've been a part of some research and finding projects from other municipalities and communities that are starting to look at other tree species to sort of adapt to climate change. Maybe one day we'll have some palm trees here, So looking at that is absolutely, I think, important. So generally, our intention is to stick with native species, but there are some cases, where other species that, as long as they're not invasive, might be, a good option too. So the NPCA does have a planting list. There is a planting list included in this as well, and our consultants will give us a new version, in fact, that has a species list with separate lists for native and then acceptable exotic species and under what circumstances those might do well too. But generally, our thought is to stick with native as much as possible, but not being open-minded still to some alternatives. Again, absolutely to mitigate some climate change, issues and trying to maintain a resilient tree.
Councillor?
Thank you. I also, Mr. Mayor, forgot to thank the Environmental Advisory Committee. This went to their committee a few times, and George McGibbon, who's not on the committee anymore, he gave a lot of input too, and I do thank him. One thing I'm really glad to see is how we're working with interdepartments, especially the planning department, and they do site plan agreements, and they want to plant trees, and this way here, our two departments are talking to each other. We know exactly what kind of trees we want, not just all Norway maples in a subdivision like the contractor wants to put in because they're cheap. We're putting in quality trees, and when Mr. Ian Roberts came to the Environment Advisory Committee, he did talk about the city should be planting quality trees rather than little seedlings and stuff like this, and bigger bang for your buck. And the committee agreed 100% with him, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You talked about changing the tree bylaw. Is that just because you're only doing this in the urban area, not in the rural area? Is that just for the urban area?
Through the mayor to the councillor. So we are still conducting our review of what approach to take. It would be, I think our current bylaw is for the entire municipal boundary. The focus of the bylaw will to be, or one of the focuses is to build up our urban forest, our urban tree canopy, but I think it would be likely that it would also look at the entire city. Yeah. Yeah.
So will we get a look at that before we pass anything, just to make sure it doesn't weirdly affect Ward 4 for some reason? And at some point, will you look at trees in Ward 4 or not? Or is that not, that this isn't even a thing? What's the plan there?
So again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the focus of this was on the urban canopy, but we did look at the entire city, the rural area as well. And so I think that we would certainly have, as we work through this bylaw, we'll bring it to council, a draft bylaw, and we can do public consultation on it as well, to look at some of those impacts as well, if that's...
The reason I say that, there's some pretty unique trees along the lakeshore, like tulip trees, and you know, those are huge trees. Everybody thinks they might be small, but they're massive trees, and they used to be all over the place, and now they're not. So, anyways, just things like that maybe people wouldn't appreciate, but if we could. If we see them being lost, we could maybe get on it and start encouraging people to plant more in that sandy area. Okay.
So again, one more comment through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So we certainly haven't neglected that. Again, the focus of this was on the urban canopy, but we are considering rural tree planting, and that's where I think we'll rely heavily on working collaboratively with some partners too, and looking at different tree planting options out there. And so I think that's absolutely important to note. I appreciate the feedback.
Okay. Just further to what Councillor Bonner was talking about, I know he's talking about basically south of Highway 3 and Kalali East, but we really need to talk to our farming community. I've had Steve and his staff several meetings with groups of farmers. I think it's important where we plant our trees on our roads because of the size of equipment today. So if we do start to look at Ward 4 at some point, the farming community needs to be included as far as style and type of tree, how low the branches hang over, and all that stuff. So that's very important to them. So I have Councillor Beauregard next.
Through your worship to Representative, I have a question regarding just, I guess, how this, first off, I guess I like the report. Thank you for bringing that forward. And think like trees are certainly important, especially in the urban area. Some of the most beautiful communities, like Boston, for example, has a beautiful urban tree canopy area in the urban area. I guess just one thing I find that somewhat conflicts is that we're proposing trees and bolstering that sort of canopy, but the urban area is also a place where development is encouraged, right? So when you have residential intensification and all these development, sometimes trees can come in the way of a future development being created. And I really don't want to see those two collide. And I would like to see that if we are planting trees, that it be done in a manner that can kind of prevent future, like any issues with future developments on land that we know is developable and could be developed. So that's something that I definitely hope that staff can be aware of and to concern. The other thing I want to talk about, so some of those developments that you show where there's no trees, is it going to be a problem for us to plant trees in some of those newer subdivisions or somewhat older, somewhat new, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatnot. Anyways, where they may have like stripped all the topsoil, put clay in, compact clay, and we're going to try to put trees in there. Are we able to do that? And what's the success rate going to be? How many trees are we going to put, and what's the likelihood of those trees actually surviving past a year?
Of course, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So absolutely, we're going to do some look at the soil type in those areas specifically and find the right tree. So we'll work with our consultant on that, or when we put this out for a request for proposal to get a tree company on board, the experts can help advise us on that. But we are anticipating having to remove some soil, plant a tree, and backfill it with a soil type that's conducive to growing. So that will be a consideration. And that's, again, why we have a very long list of different kinds of trees, I think, is finding the right, there's always an option and an opportunity to just find the right tree for the right place. And it's not going to be always the same type of tree, and that's why we do have to be a little bit strategic for that. I did want to comment on your first part too. So I've actually been working with economic development as well. So absolutely, this is we are a growing community. This is important. So we are focusing our tree planting on boulevards to plant trees there, and also in our parks and our facility land, so buildings that we own, and we can build that up. And there's a lot of opportunity. So we've got lots of space to plant trees for the next couple of years before we have to look at, some of those other properties. But we are working with economic development and planning, because we certainly don't want to plant, a whole forest of trees in the city center and then a building development is coming. So there's absolutely room for both. And that's what this whole plan, I think, really wanted to tie together, is that you can have, this livable urban community with development and still have a healthy urban forest. So, but absolutely balancing those two things, we recognize are two of the key priorities of council, right? And I think it's absolutely achievable and doable. Thank you.
Yeah, through your worship. I've just seen developments where in different municipalities where it really becomes a problem when there's a tree in the boulevard where trying to put services, and you can only cut a certain percentage of the roots, and you got to get tree inventory preservation. But there's a lot of layers and a lot of difficulty in doing that, because a policy comes forward and says, this policy A says you shall not remove trees. And all of a sudden, that's a done deal. You can't do it. There's no wiggle room. So I want to make sure that staff are conscious of this, and that we can really make sure that the two work in tandem. And then in regards to those, your comment regarding those developments where there's lack of topsoil and whatnot, I just know I know someone on Royal, and I'm not sure it's in your ward, where they have a tree, and apparently because it's one of those developments where they've had those issues and there's no trees on the boulevard, it takes forever to grow. Apparently it's been I think it's 10, 20 years, and it's finally got to a size that it probably should have been in 10 years ago. So it's just something I really hope that we can do well on that as well. And then the last thing, I guess, is the bylaw that you brought forward and Councillor Bodner brought up. Are we going to be addressing private trees in that bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we are reviewing that still. So what we're envisioning right now is bringing a new tree bylaw, public tree bylaw, and then perhaps having some policies around that. And we are still looking into the private tree bylaw aspect.
Because I know Fort Erie and I know Madden Lake especially have those bylaws.
Yes.
I'm not sure I'm so much of a fan of them.
Yes.
But I definitely understand the public side, but the private side, it's a little bit different story, but we can talk about it then. Yeah, I'll just leave it for that time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to sort of piggyback on Councillor Bagu and Councillor Beauregard, and I was hoping he was going to say something. He told me about a situation the way St. Catharines does it, because I thought it was a brilliant idea, or that they have a brilliant policy. So I always worry that we don't deal from strength. So we're now in the process of having 7,000 units in some form or another of draft plan approval. That's probably more houses than we have right now. Now, obviously, that's going to take a long time. But I think we ought to pause and say, in the development agreement, one of the choices of trees is not maple. So that might help. The other is, if I understand Councillor Beauregard's story about in St. Catharines, the city of St. Catharines, they bill the developer and they plant the tree with their landscape contractor. So they don't do it in-house. They hire the best tree planting company, and they tell the developer the trees are going to be this far apart. You know, you're building a $900,000 house. We don't want the $1.99 tree. We're going to have the right tree, and you're going to put enough topsoil and not clay to ball the tree in the boulevard, and this is how many trees are going to be there, and we'll send you the bill. And that's how, in my view, you get a proper right type of trees, enough trees, trees of a certain age and caliper that aren't going to die. And you could probably get a lot of bang for the buck if the growth in Port Colborne happens the way everybody hopes it will. And there is no silver bullet. You got to do all the other things. But I do worry that we go away from a meeting like this and we say, yeah, that's in the hands of the planner, and and nobody really takes ownership about it. We haven't done a lot of houses in Port Colborne and subdivisions, and I would say there's some proof that we haven't been ready for prime time the way they've happened. But we need to be. And so it's easy to just, I think, talk about that solution, but I think we have an opportunity at our early stage of all this growth, and where there's going to be an apartment building or 5 in Mapleview, the old cement plant property, you, Mr. Developer, are going to have to make up for the fact that 300 units are going this way, and so we're going to plant in the park, and your donation for going this way is perhaps the same or half if you were going this way. And we're going to put in the trees in the park. And I think there needs to be a lot of time spent on this great initiative to find a way that just isn't public dollars. And yet it can be better than what we're doing now. And it's not, again, on our dime, but it's affordable because it's going in a multi-million-dollar subdivision. It's a small sliver to do it right. But left to their own devices, you're going to have good developers, and you're going to have the ones that want to put in the cheapest tree in the worst soil to get it done. So I would love to see you come back in conjunction with Planning and Public Works to develop that policy as a key cornerstone of this overall one that I think could pay big dividends. And You know, I think it's just an example of how you can do things right if we use more brain power than necessarily just city dollars. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor?
Your Worship, I just want to clarify.
You're lucky you're not in the region, because you only get one shot at the question. We'll have to implement that here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to just clarify, just what St. Catherine's does, just because you're mentioning. It's just that, like say for a consent application, a consent is granted, they would make it a condition that you make a payment for a 60-centimeter boulevard tree, but that doesn't necessarily mean you will plant the tree. The city plants that tree, and it doesn't mean that it'll go in front of that house or that lot. It'll go wherever on a city municipal property, wherever, but essentially it's like cash in lieu, and they have an approved tree planting list that they use that is for typically native trees, and that's what they use for a lot of their site plans, and when you're doing a landscape plan, or they'll do that. So that's just the only points I wanted to make.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a couple things. Any other councillors over here? Okay. NPCA, I had a call from CAO Sharma before she left, and when I was served on the board, we applied for the 2 million tree program that the feds were putting out, but we got turned down. My understanding is that has been resurrected by the federal government under their whatever dollar value they put in, and it looks like the NPCA is going to be given that. We were a partner at the table right away. It's one thing I did as a board member and as mayor is that we got our staff involved with it. I just wonder if have they reached out to you, or have you heard anything more about that?
To you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have been involved with some of the communications around that, and I don't have all the details, but my understanding is the focus is on private property land to plant the trees, so we have had some conversations around that, and I think those kind of initiatives would be important to trying to build up, especially like in some of the farm areas and things like that, the rural areas. That might be a really good partnership. So we are exploring that, and we've had some conversations, yeah.
Perfect. There was one policy that I never agreed with, was that whenever we took a tree off a boulevard, we didn't put it back. We said, oh, we'll put one in your front lawn. And the homeowner said, well, I don't want a tree. And now you look at a lot of our boulevards, specifically down in this area, in the older part, no, I think that should be back in there where a tree comes down because of lightning, storm, rot, we put a tree back in that boulevard. So I'm glad to see you talking about that and bringing that back in. And my last one is our Carolinian forest areas. Councillor Bodner talked about that earlier, but we have an area at the end of Catherine Street, which all those houses that front Sugarloaf and back onto the path from H.H. Knoll to King Street is actually an historic Carolinian forest. Probably one of the last ones really within the city of Port Colborne that's as based on when you go east, especially towards Fort Erie at what is it, Holloway Bay Road, or one of those that has the big Marcy Woods at it. Yeah. So you talk about the NPCA's project. Maybe we can talk about the neighbors in that area and maybe not reestablish because it still is there, but enhance that Carolinian zone within that area of trees. I used to live there, so I know exactly what it was like. And some have been lost over storms and rot over the last 20, 30 years since I moved from there. But I think those neighbors in that area would be more than happy to get involved in a project like that in the urban area. So, but I think because we did receive from Carolinian Canada 4 trees, they actually delivered to City Hall. I couldn't believe it. We were supposed to pick them up, and the 2 young guys came here. We had Dave Zabo. He met us here, and that goes back to about 2020, 2019. And I can't remember the 4 trees. I don't know if anybody remembers. But they were Carolinian, former species of this area. Can't find very many. They planted them out at Centennial Park. So my understanding is they're still growing. But they were pretty cool. Had a really cool name. Don't ask me, it doesn't come to mind. But, no, it wasn't butternut, no. But I don't think anyways. But yeah, so with this initiative, I agree with council. I'm sure we're going to all support 100%, but just as far as all the partnerships that we can do, yeah. Because I mean, the scouts, I don't think there's enough scouts around anymore that plant trees. Did a lot in my day with my kids. Pawpaw tree, that's what it was. Our consultants probably know what they are, the pawpaw tree, right? There you go. So, but yeah, they delivered those to us, so we appreciate that. Any further questions? If I could have councillors Bagu and Danch move this, all in favor, and that's carried. 8.8, should we go back to 8.8? 8.9. (2024) Water Main Replacement Project Update Report 2024-146. Our recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2024-146 be received. Then an additional $4,428,000 from the Water Reserve be approved for the 2024 Water Main Replacement Capital Project Construction. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question. I seem to forget where our West Street pipes are going to be for the, I was on this, on this project, the West Street project.
Staff?
Yes, through your worship. So on the West Street, it's at the very south end of West Street. There's a single water main out there that is older in age, so that's the one we are replacing. That's indicated within the report.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Is that the one is going north, or is it going to go south?
Yes, so it would be north to south. It would be installed on west.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Cassandra or to Steve. Cassandra and I had a talk today about this item that I pulled, and my concern was virtually the doubling of the cost when we applied for the grant. And I know it's taken us 2 or 3 years to get to this. It was back a couple years ago when we did Erie Street. I'm glad we did it then now because of these new rules. But this brings to me up a bigger picture. We put a lot of time and effort into looking at how we're going to catch up infrastructure-wise. And we put budgets behind that. And if this is any early indication, at 100% increase, we're going to do half of what we said we would do. Now that's I hope, the worst case scenario, in that these ran into some environmental issues and there's new rules. And you can't change the past, but I do think that this is maybe an opportunity where if we have our next 10 water mains or sewer mains that we're going to put in, that we do, perhaps number 1 is the worst, but it also has the worst soil profile. So maybe number 3 is actually better than number 1, cost-wise. So should we be looking at our list and doing some soil testing around them, and maybe we have areas that don't have the contamination but are bad, and maybe we're going to have to adjust that the order becomes different, but we still get a bang for the buck and we do it, and we can do more of number 3, 9, and 11 than we can number 1. And so there's still a mathematical workable solution there, because these new rules on soils, like this is big if it isn't twice as much, if it's 50% more or it's 33% more. It just cuts down on our chasing the solution. So I just wanted to bring that really to your attention, and perhaps, relook at the next 4 or 5, and maybe they change order because of this. So I don't know if you had any comment, but that's...
So Steve, if I could add something, because Councillor Bruno brings up a good point. Unfortunately, though, we've added a road to this. We've added West Street, which wasn't part of the original. So I think you've got to extrapolate that cost, because then your increase isn't quite as bad, because you're actually doing another road. So do we know what West Street is of that 4.4 million, approximately? Guess, approximate. Okay, so around $1 million of it. So you're looking at around 3 million. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Through your worship, so there is the West Street addition, but there's also the excess soils, and the excess soils did play a large role in the advance cost. It just puts us in a position where we need to be more innovative and look for alternative ways to install or correct the infrastructure. It could be through the means of lining water mains in the future, especially in areas that we know that may have contamination in them. So it's definitely something, as Councillor Bruno mentioned, like we are going to go back to the drawing board, look at the plan that we have proposed at this point, and see how we can adapt it to make sure that our plan is still achievable in the future.
Yeah, one thing I want to caution council on: when you delay certain projects, it'll cost you more in the future if there's environmental issues. It's not ever going to get cheaper. So you're going to find, probably not in our span here, but as we move forward, some of the landfills around it won't be able to accept it, because they're either full or they're not accepting it anymore. So now you're trucking it, God knows where, to a approved facility, and then your costs even go up. So I would suggest you actually get them over with now while we still have the wherewithal to get rid of the soil, if we don't come up with an alternative way of doing it. So we really got to look at that. It is a fine balance, you're right. Go ahead.
Just on that, I know I've been a proponent in the past of this. You know, interest rates might or hopefully come down, but even if they don't, to your point, it's going to cost more. It may cost more. It may cost less to borrow the money and get to our plan faster than it actually is going to cost by waiting.
Yeah. Any further questions on this one? If I could have Councillors Bagu and Bruno move that report. All in favor? That's carried. We have one correspondence item, 9.3. Bear with me. It's an Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and Ontario Medical Association, OMA, resolution re-physician shortage. And Councillor Aquilina will move this, and Councillor Bruno will second it. I'm going to read out the resolution because this is important on what we're doing here in the city of Port Colborne. Whereas the state of healthcare in Ontario is in crisis, with 2.3 million Ontarians lacking access to a family doctor, emergency room closures across the province, patients being derostered, and 40% of family doctors considering retirement over the next 5 years. And whereas it has become increasingly challenging to attract and retain an adequate healthcare workforce throughout the health sector across Ontario, and whereas the Northern Ontario School of Medicine University says communities in Northern Ontario are short more than 350 physicians, including more than 200 family doctors, and half of the physicians working in Northern Ontario expect to retire in the next 5 years, and that's Northern Ontario only. Whereas Ontario municipal governments play an integral role in the healthcare system through responsibilities in public health, long-term care, paramedicine, and other investments. Whereas the percentage of family physicians practicing comprehensive family medicine has declined from 77 in 2008 to 65% in 2022. And whereas per capita healthcare spending in Ontario is the lowest of all provinces in Canada, and whereas a robust workforce development throughout a provincial sector-wide health human resources strategy would significantly improve access to health services across the province, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne urges the province of Ontario to recognize the physician shortage in the city of Port Colborne and Ontario, and to fund health care appropriately and ensure every Ontarian has access to physician care. Comments? The only comment I'd like to make here is, when I just, as our regional councillor Davies said, I just got back from PEI, and in listening to members of provincial government from PEI that I've known for a while now, and had time to sit down and talk to, this is across Canada. You could take out the word Ontario, put any province in. This is across Canada. So in reality, you know, the feds do fund healthcare across the country. Now the funding they've been giving us over the last number of years actually declined. So it's hurt everybody. So I think and I know the premiers have met recently with regards to this, and I believe they're gonna have another meeting on it. But this isn't an Ontario crisis, this is a Canadian crisis, but it is good that we send this. I would ask that this be sent to our MPPs in the area, as well as our MPs in the area. So we've got 4 of each, so we could send those to them. And then obviously respond to AMO, which we're being represented in 3 weeks. Gary, you guys are going? 3 weeks with Councillor Elliott.
Gary actually had a comment.
Yeah, and then also to the OMA. Gary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention that the CAO, myself, and Councillor Elliott have a meeting confirmed with the president of the OMA at the AMO conference. I think the meeting is confirmed for Monday.
Perfect.
Monday, August 18th or 19th. So just FYI for council.
Good. You can bring this forward to them. That we've done it at least. Plus we'll send him a copy of our resolution. Any further questions on this one? All in favor? Thank you. No motions. Does anybody have a notice of motion? Minutes of boards and committees. I'll do these in block. We have the Port Colborne Museum minutes of May 21st. We have the City of Port Colborne and Township of Wainfleet Joint Fire Services Review Committee minutes July 8th, which we have a recommendation that we have to deal with, which is let me find it here. It's in my notes. So it's under 19.3, Council recommendations arising from boards and committees, Joint Fire Service Review Committee, moved by Councillor Hoyle, seconded by Councillor Bruno, that the councils of both participating municipalities be respectfully requested to extend the term of the Joint Services Review Committee to November 1st, 2024. Wainfleet did theirs last week, and it's coming to us tonight. Questions on it? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. So I got to go back because that was separate. So 19.1 and 19.2. Yeah, because it's the minutes from that committee and then the museum. If I could have Councillors Beauregard and Aquilina move those 2 sets of minutes. All in favor? That's carried. Bylaws 20.1 through to 20.7, which covers the amendment of what we just passed. Can I have Councillors Hoyle and Bagu move those? Any questions to the bylaws? All in favor? That's carried. Thank those for attending this evening and those watching on our streaming. And we'll see you at our next meeting. And remember, Canal Days in 10 days. Come and enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much. We are now adjourned.